My name is Annie Sterling. I'm a program director with Capital Impact. In my role as program director at Capital Impact, I'm also the research and strategy lead for the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. And I am joined by two of my colleagues from Capital Impact today. I'll give them a moment to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Baines. I'm a program associate at Capital Impact and the research lead for Sacramento K-16.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Baker. I'm a program manager at Capital Impact and also a research lead for the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative.
All right. So before we begin, I'm going to pass things to Jason to kind of ground our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. So we just want to start today by grounding this conversation in lived experience of a high school student we heard from during a recent focus group we held to inform the strategy of the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. She was a first-generation, low-income student of color from a rural part of our region. Like many students navigating complex systems, she was doing everything right. She was enrolled in dual enrollment courses, earning college credit while still in high school, but because of how her schedule was structured, she couldn't participate in CTE programs at her school. So while she was getting ahead academically, she missed out on hands-on career exploration. She told us she became interested in the medical field, specifically becoming a sonogram technician. But how did she hear about it? Not from a school counselor, not from a career fair, but she saw it in a YouTube ad. She didn't know how to take the next steps, and no one was there to guide her. Like so many students from underrepresented backgrounds, she was left to figure it out alone. And this is the gap. This is why career exposure, planning, and pathway alignment aren't extras. They're essentials. Students shouldn't have to choose between earning college credit and discovering who they want to become. And if we're serious about equity, then our systems, education, workforce, and community must work together to ensure that students have clear, supported, and connected pathways from the classroom to a meaningful career. And that's what today is about. So we're going to walk through how the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative is connecting our region to design those pathways, as well as share a bit about statewide policy, the governor's priorities for career education and regional collaboration, as well as the state budget that have an impact on all of our work. Now I'll pass it on to Annie to discuss the K-16 Collaborative.
Hi, everyone. So we are a small-ish group today, which is kind of nice because we have opportunity for some real discussion. So please, at any point during our presentation today, if you have questions, if there are things that are piquing your interest and you'd like us to go deeper and discuss further, just, don't hesitate to raise your virtual hand or drop questions in the chat, and we can stop and talk too about things as we walk through the information. So just an overview of what we're going to cover. We'll start with just a little bit of background about the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. I know a couple of you on the call are involved already in the collaborative, but for those who aren't, we'll share a bit about the mission and goals. And then we're going to focus in on a few other statewide programs and priorities that are impacting our work, and I think probably yours as well, since you are joining us on the call today. Looking at the governor's priorities for career education, regional collaboration, and how all of those priorities are showing up in the state budget. So we will provide background information on a program called California Jobs First. We'll take a close look at the master plan for career education. And then take a look at the budget implementation of the master plan, as well as other budget implications for K-12, community college, CSU, and UC education systems. And then we'll close by tying all of that back into the K-16 Collaborative's goals. We'll have some time for discussion, and we would also love to get all of your input for us on the next policy briefs, because we do publish these briefs and hold conversations about what's going on at the state level that impacts our work on a quarterly basis. To begin, though, I'll share a little bit of background about the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. So as a collaborative, we convene educational institutions across the full spectrum, from K-12 districts, county offices of education, community colleges, and four-year universities in the greater Sacramento region. You can see the map on your screen. It's a pretty large footprint. We are convening educational institutions across an 8-county region in Sacramento. And we formed the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative when we received grant funding a few years ago through the K-16 Collaborative's grant program statewide statewide grant program. We are kind of founded on an $18.1 million grant, a 4-year grant from the state. And we're focused on educational equity and career pathways to help meet workforce needs. All of the work that we do as a collaborative in using our grant funding to advance career pathways and educational opportunity in our region is also aligned with a program called California Jobs First, which is focused on workforce development and job quality. So the work that we do to prepare learners for the workforce kind of goes hand in hand with what California Jobs First is focused on to promote economic development in our region. Our collaborative has 5 key goals that everything we do is kind of working to support. We have a goal that is kind of tied to the organization Improve Your Tomorrow and its 1300 campaign. The goal is to send an additional 1,300 young men of color to UC Davis and Sac State by 2025. And we are making good progress towards that goal. We also have a kind of a dual enrollment focused goal. It's to triple the number of the region students that can graduate high school with the equivalent of the first year of college credit completed by 2026. We have a goal around career pathways to triple the number of students in our region who can graduate from high school with healthcare and engineering pathways completed that articulate either to apprenticeships or stacked post-secondary certificates and degrees. We have an adult learner and comebacker attainment goal to award 2,000 degrees or certificates to comebackers and reverse transfer students by 2026. And then finally, to achieve Hispanic serving institution status and maintain that status for all of the colleges and universities through the full post-secondary continuum in our region by 2026 as well, which is the end of the grant term. So a little bit of context for our presentation. The reason why we're going to be focusing in on taking a close look today at both Jobs First and the Master Plan for Career Ed is because we have learned over the course of our research that the governor's office is really prioritizing aligning and kind of bringing all of these programs together so that we're working kind of as part of a cohesive whole and system statewide in support of some of the same ends. So our collaborative began with an original plan of creating and strengthening pathways in healthcare, engineering, and computing. And we've been working to align our work along the way with our regional We Prosper Together California Jobs First Collaborative since the start. But now we see with this new trailer bill that's been introduced as part of the current budget package that the governor's office is specifically signaling they'd like to see this alignment broaden even further. As part of this trailer bill includes broadening the pathway requirements for K-16 collaboratives, eliminating specific pathway requirements, but actually broadening those requirements of pathways to align with any that are part of the California Jobs First priorities. And we'll take a look at the California Jobs First economic blueprint and what those priority sectors are. There's a lot of them, so it really kind of opens things up a lot for K-16 collaboratives right now. Additionally, the governor's office released the executive summary of the master plan for career education back in December. And we have learned as part of our network of statewide education K-16 collaboratives and from representatives from the governor's office that we're really explicitly encouraged to build alignment between our work and the master plan. And that master plan we've heard is going to be forthcoming, should be released very soon. And so we're going to give an overview of it today and take a close look at how the work that we're doing with the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative is already working to build that alignment and where there are opportunities for us to push further. So to kick things off, I will pass things to Jaceline with California Jobs First.
Hi, yes, I'll be discussing the California Jobs First initiative and how it connects to the K-16 collaborative efforts. Next slide, please. So California Jobs First is a statewide program that empowers regions to create their own economic and workforce development strategies by forming regional collaboratives rooted in community needs. In the Sacramento region, this effort is led by We Prosper Together, a collaborative convened by Valley Vision, which spans 8 counties. So this geographic footprint mirrors the reach of the K-16 collaborative, and both efforts are working to better align education and workforce systems. Next slide. So the state has supported this work through 3 key funding phases. First was a planning phase where each region received $5 million to launch their collaborative, conduct research, and create a regional economic plan. So currently the program is in the catalyst phase, and our region received $9 million to fund projects in high opportunity sectors. So far, they have funded 11 projects equating to $6.5 million, and 3 of the funded projects directly align with the K-16 priorities. And a second round of funding will be available in spring/summer of 2025. And next will be the implementation phase. So over the next 3 years, the state will invest $125 million for ready-to-go job-creating projects. In Sacramento, the focus for potential projects will be on precision manufacturing, including semiconductor and battery production. And this structured funding approach ensures that economic development is intentional, data-driven, and aligned with the state's long-term workforce goals. Next slide. So now that we've established how California Jobs First supports regional strategy, the slide gives a quick snapshot of where we are in the process and what's happening recently. So on the left, you'll see the statewide economic blueprint, California's new framework for guiding economic growth over the next decade. It identifies 10 priority industry sectors and will direct state investments to create jobs, support innovation, and expand access to good paying work. In the middle, we highlight the catalyst phase, which is now in motion. So 11 projects were awarded funding in our region, and a second round of funding is expected later this year. So this phase is very critical. It allows the region to test, refine, and prepare projects for long-term implementation funding. And on the right, you'll see the 4 priority sectors We Prosper Together has identified for job growth: business services, precision manufacturing, working lands, and biotech. So these are the sectors where we see the most opportunity to create high quality, future-facing jobs for local residents. And we'll go deeper into these sectors next to show how they connect directly to the K-16 goals and pathways. Next slide. So on this slide, you're looking at the state economic blueprint, which outlines California's strategic priorities for industry development. The sectors that are circled here represent the priority areas of focus for the Sacramento region. So the region is also pursuing other opportunity sectors with available funding, but for today's presentation, we're just going to highlight the core priorities identified by We Prosper Together. So the blueprint serves as a guiding framework for inclusive and sustainable economic growth across California. It highlights key sectors the state aims to strengthen, accelerate, or bet on for the future innovation and investment. And by aligning regional efforts with the statewide vision, We Prosper Together is helping position the capital region to access new resources, attract industry investment, and create strong career pathways. And so from this broader framework, the 4 priority sectors that reflect both regional strengths and opportunities are precision manufacturing, which includes microelectronics, semiconductors, and advanced transportation components. Next is business services. So that includes legal services, management, consulting, and advertising and marketing, just to name a few. Third is biotech innovation. So with world-leading research in agricultural and biological sciences, the capital region is a hub for agricultural innovation, pharmaceuticals, and biotech. And fourth is working lands. So this ties together agricultural, forestry, and mining. The sector supports quality jobs in manufacturing, processing, logistics, and supply chain advancements for construction materials, wood products, and food. Next slide. So this slide shows how California Jobs First funding is being distributed across several programs and priority areas. The largest pool of funding is $125 million, and this is available for the implementation phase. But it's important to note that this is a competitive statewide fund. So all the regional collaboratives across California will be applying for a portion of these dollars to support ready-to-go job-creating projects in strategic sectors. There's also targeted apprenticeship funding, including support for new programs in priority industries and for opportunity youth ages 18 to 24. The High Roads Training Partnership are investing in healthcare workforce needs like behavioral health, nursing, and disaster preparedness. So these are areas that are both urgent and high impact. And finally, $13 million has been dedicated to economic recovery in the Los Angeles region. and it's focused on supporting small businesses and communities affected by the recent wildfires. Next slide. Now, how does this all connect to K-16 Collaborative? While K-16 is focused on advancing educational equity, We Prosper Together is focused on growing high-quality jobs. Together, they intersect through a shared strategy of creating inclusive workforce pathways. So both collaboratives are aligned in their commitment to strengthening career-aligned education pathways in high-demand fields like healthcare, engineering, and computing, along with expanding dual enrollment opportunities to connect students with early college credit and career preparation. Also, increasing career outreach and awareness, especially for priority student populations, and reducing barriers to employment, like childcare and transportation. And this is to ensure students can not only access education, but also transition successfully into careers. So this alignment is already driving real impact. Some key accomplishments include shared data systems across regional education providers to better target dual enrollment, career pathways, and adult learners. Additionally, the recent rounds of Catalyst funding sponsored 3 major K-16 projects in healthcare, agro-tourism, and biotech. And the collaboratives continue to meet regularly through shared governance and monthly coordination meetings, building strong cross-sector relationships that make this work sustainable. One of the most powerful tools we have to connect education and workforce is dual enrollment. So students may be earning college credit, but those courses aren't always tied to a broader career path, especially in sectors where our region is seeing the most growth. And this is where the work of the K-16 Collaborative and We Prosper Together intersect in meaningful ways. We Prosper Together has identified 4 priority sectors that are driving economic growth in our region. So to truly prepare students for these fields, we need to build intentional, stackable career pathways that start as early as high school. That means expanding dual enrollment, not just to increase college access, but to align coursework with real career opportunities. So the K-16 Collaborative is already working on this. We're piloting new dual enrollment opportunities in healthcare, engineering, and computing. We're building stronger connections between K-12 systems and local employers, and mapping out the skills and experiences students need to transition from education into these high-growth industries. By aligning our education paths with regional industry priorities, we can build a more seamless, equitable pipeline from high school to college to career, ensuring our students are not just earning credits, but prepared for the jobs that will shape our region's future. Next slide. So looking ahead, there are 4 major opportunities where this alignment can deepen. First is expanding engineer pathways. So with increased investment in semiconductor manufacturing, the collaborative can respond by developing engineering programs aligned with employer demand. Second is inclusive rural investment. In rural areas like Nevada and Yuba counties, seasonal and low-wage jobs dominate. We need targeted training and industry partnerships to create high-quality jobs in sectors like agricultural technology and working lands. Third are career pathways and state healthcare priorities. By leveraging the High Roads training funds, we can expand apprenticeships and certifications in behavioral health, nursing, and other state prioritized healthcare roles. And fourth is boosting career awareness. So we can amplify outreach by working with trusted community organizations to connect students, especially priority populations, to training and job opportunities in growth sectors. And next slide, please. So that wraps up my section. Thank you all for listening. I'd love to pause here and open it up for any questions or reflections you might have.
Yeah, so feel free to come off mute, or you can also drop ideas or questions in the chat. We'd love to know what kind of thoughts are percolating, what's resonating with you, and what information do you think you could use or you might want to know more about. All right. hearing none, we will continue to move forward, but as things occur to you, just please feel free to use the chat or message us directly too. And we'll have more opportunities later on in the presentation to pause and chat together too. Oh, I see one thing. Okay, cool. Let's continue onward. Emma.
Awesome. Feel free to head to the next slide. I'll be covering the master plan for career education today and sharing key updates, examining how the state's strategy is taking shape and what it means for our region. So next slide. Providing a bit of background, back in August 2023, Governor Newsom created an executive order to redesign California's master plan for education. And since then, the governor's office has convened regional meetings and focus groups across the state to refine recommendations. This past December, we received the executive summary with the full report to be forthcoming, as Annie mentioned. So next slide. A little bit more on historical context background here. What is the master plan? Where did it originate from? And how does it aim to create impact for the state? The current master plan builds on California's original 1960s master plan for higher education, which prioritized the state higher education institutions as we know them today. And the 1960s plan was developed in a labor market where a majority of middle-class jobs did not require a college degree. And also, as we know, the past 60 years, the workforce has changed a lot with rapidly changing technology and workforce needs. All have altered the success of the traditional pathways. So we've seen this issue arise where, one, many Californians face barriers to those traditional pathways and inequitable challenges existing for access to higher education institutions and thus quality jobs. And two, employers are struggling to fulfill critical roles with qualified talent. So the updated master plan aims to better connect education and workforce systems to create pathways that can prepare students for high demand careers and also meet regional and statewide economic needs. Next slide. Want to take a moment for this quote. The only certainty at this point is that our ship that we're putting our young people and our futures onto is not well built nor intentionally built. Ben Cheetah said this, Chief Cabinet Secretary at the Master Plan for Career Education kickoff webinar last winter. So to go from there with kind of identifying the problem statement, the Master Plan has, in recognizing that there are gaps in those traditional pathways, the Master Plan for Career Education aims to create career pathways where hands-on learning and real-world skill building ensure that education can lead to viable jobs for all Californians. And as you can see, this slide lists the 6 action area goals outlined in the master plan. We'll go deep on each action area in the slides to come, looking at how the K-16 Collaborative is currently aligning with each of these goals and what opportunities exist for the collaborative. So moving on to next slide and goal 1, creating a state planning and coordinating body. So what this is historically education and workforce programs have been funded and managed per individual project, with separate grant applications, reporting processes, and strategies. And so the intention of this first goal is to bring together educators, workforce training providers, and employers to align efforts, assess economic needs, and build cohesive strategies and funding streams. So alignment and opportunity here is the collaborative can continue to align to state priorities using the California Jobs First economic blueprint, as well as the master plan for career education to integrate these priority sectors into career pathway initiatives. Next, looking to goal 2, strengthening regional coordination. The plan emphasizes the need for clear division of roles at the regional level between education, workforce, and community stakeholders. It encourages regions to develop strong cross-sector partnerships and work-based learning initiatives that reflect local industry needs. So current alignment on this goal is the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative exemplifies this through the alignment with We Prosper Together and also the regional data sharing agreement that was recently made. Additional opportunity exists here to extend regional alignment further, continuing to build regional employer engagement strategies and enhancing work-based learning and earn and learn opportunities. Next slide. Goal 3 is to support skills-based hiring through a career passport. So what this is a major tactical component of the master plan, the career passport, which would be a tool that would expand credentialing for skills recognition. So for example, it would allow military service members to receive higher education credit for skills learned during their service. This approach would support skills-based hiring and career advancement, especially for non-traditional learners and non-traditional students. Alignment that we see here is the Comebacker campaign, which is a program that supports adults who are returning from the workforce to complete their post-secondary degrees, sponsored by the K-16 Collaborative. And this lays the foundation for the Career Passport by supporting adult learners to earn credit for previous skills learned in the workforce. Opportunities, we see that we can continue to strengthen job pathways through apprenticeships, service learning, continued implementation of credit for prior learning, reverse transfer, and alignment of skills frameworks. Next slide. Goal 4 is to develop career pathways for high school and college students. So this would create roadmaps for career pathways, expand early exposure to fields, workplace learning, and apprenticeships, all programs that are designed to bridge education and employment. Alignment we see here is Career Pathways Work Group and also funding projects like Project Rise, Project MED, and employer partnerships all speak to this goal. Opportunities exist to expand efforts through additional early career exposure programs, structured advisory system for career pathways, and creating strong pathway programming for high school and college students. Next slide. Goal 5, strengthening workforce training for young people and adults. So this focuses on expanding training access for priority student populations, such as justice-impacted individuals, adult learners, or English language learners. This goal is a good example of how the master plan can act as an umbrella for both education and workforce, aligning with both the K-16 Collaborative and California Jobs First priorities in sync. Next slide. Looking to goal 6, might have some Wi-Fi pieces here. I'll pause here for a second and then I can continue on. Perfect. Goal 6, increasing access and affordability of higher education. This would increase access to higher education, as it says. Master plan calls for expanded public benefits and the removal of barriers in addition to streamlined supports for students. Alignment that we see here is the collaborative's goal to increase men of color to regional post-secondary institutions, increase HSI status, and streamline wraparound supports for opportunity youth and first-generation students all contribute to this goal. And opportunities, the collaborative could consider providing resources, raising awareness for public benefits and non-tuition cost assistance available to students, as well as advocate for higher education institutions to meet the needs of priority student populations. And we can move to next slide. Great. How Sacramento K-16 Collaborative aligns with the master plan. We see a lot of alignment here and have a list on the slides. I want to include and go deep on one, data sharing. The master plan emphasizes coordination as a key theme throughout all 6 of those area action goals we just covered. And this would include data sharing as a tactic for coordination efforts. The recent data sharing agreement with Elk Grove Unified School District, Sacramento County Office of Ed, Los Rios Community College District, Sac State, and UC Davis is a model outcome of this goal. Regional coordination, very aligned with the K-16 Collaborative. Master plan names an analysis of regional coordination, and we see the Sacramento K-16 as a model example of this for the state. And recent events and convening community stakeholders like the K-16 Collaborative's quarterly Human Bulb events speak to this goal. And last, career pathway development. We see, again, career pathways with employer partnerships, as mentioned, Project Rise, Project MED, and the Roseville Mechatronics are all demonstrate what intentional career-connected learning can look like in action. Last, in conclusion, the master plan focuses on aligning a coordinated vision for education and workforce systems to promote a future with accessible pathways. Our goal with the K-16 Collaborative is not just alignment with state goals, but to lead in creative and successful education pathways for students in the region. So we can go to next slide, and I will pause here for any questions on the master plan framework. Great. I will pass it. Keep going on to budget. Going on to budget. So how does the master plan, I'm looking at the governor's proposed 2025-2026 budget. Next slide. Continuing on with the master plan, how does this show up in the 2025-26 budget? The career passport is allocated 100 million in the proposed budget, with 50 million towards credit for prior learning, 7 million to support veterans credentialing. Workforce and education coordination, we see 5 million to establish the California Education Interagency Council. Again, that keyword coordinate, this would coordinate initiatives across TK through 12, higher education, and state workforce agencies. Labor and Workforce Development Agency has a proposed 4 million to support and analyze regional coordination for career education and training. And a one-time $17 million fund will support the Regional Initiative for Social Enterprises CalRISE program. And last here, data sharing and tech updates is receiving 330 million to support tech updates and streamline data collection, 168 of which will go to complete the statewide technology transformation project, and 162.5 million will develop the common cloud data platform across California community college systems. Next slide. So looking at the 2025-2026 proposed budget impact on education, starting first on the furthest left bucket with the orange TK through 12 budget. At this level, there are notable carve-outs for student-centered programs and supports for workforce development, including 2.4 billion to complete the expansion of universal transitional kindergarten, which would allow all four-year-olds to qualify and reduce staff to student ratios. $1.8 billion block grant for teacher professional development, recruitment retention efforts, and expansion for career pathways and dual enrollment opportunities, among others. 435 million to increase the expanded learning opportunities program, which is a before-after school program for kindergarten through 6th grade students. 250 million for the National Board Certified Teacher Recruitment Incentive Program. Now looking at the middle teal bucket on community college budget, things are looking relatively bright for California community colleges. Unlike its other higher education counterparts, CCC received an increase of funding from Proposition 98, with 16 million allocated for cost of living salary increase, adult education programs, and other community college programs. Again, listing here 100 million dedicated to the career passport and the 330 million for tech updates. For the furthest right bucket here, CSUs. As for four-year funding institutions, we'll start by taking a high-level look at the resource allocation in the budget that pertains to the K-16 Collaborative progress, and then we will dive deeper into some of the funding cuts in slides to come. To start, the budget delays a promised general fund increase to UC and CSU from the 2025-26 budget fiscal year to 2027-28 budget due to the state's budgeting efforts and fiscal balancing, which we'll take a closer look at in a moment. And then regarding other funding, there are some concerning cuts to student aid programs. First, a spending plan for the proposed Cal Grant reform was not granted. The Cal Grant continues to lack resources needed to increase accessibility to low-income students. Our previous policy brief did a deep dive into the Cal Grant and the Cal Grant reform, and we can drop it in the chat if you'd like it for reference. Perfect, thanks, Chaseline. Additionally, the middle class scholarship saw a reduction in spending, receiving 572 million. So coupled with the delay of the Cal Grant reform, the impacts on college affordability for students are concerning. Again, our last brief goes into more depth on this. Last, the Golden State Teacher Grant Program received a one-time $50 million funding support. So tuition assistance for teachers and counselors who commit to serving in high-need schools will likely be preserved, but the awards will be less than previous cohorts. Next slide. Going deeper on UC and CSU budget cuts as promised, looking at the furthest top left, UC and CSU delayed funds. Want to note that not only do UC and CSU face the delayed general fund increase that was promised, the proposed budget actually decreases funding for higher education by 360 million, which represents 1.6%, with UC and CSU bearing the brunt of these costs. The state's broader effort to cut state operational expenses also disproportionately affects UC and CSU systems. Starting in 2025 fiscal year, this July, the state establishes a 7.95% deduction in state operations budgets for state agencies, which encompasses state higher education institutions. However, all the state funding that UC and CSU receives is categorized as state operations. And for CSU, 7.95% in operational costs can represent up to 20% of their full-time faculty. So some serious repercussions there. While they're receiving less funding, the UC and CSU systems are meeting their student enrollment goals, which are set by the state. So with the state not holding up to its end of the bargain to provide sufficient funding, our K-16 collaborative goals also hinge on the ability of UC Davis and Sac State to matriculate greater numbers of students. So budget cuts with the matched number of enrolled students could affect the number of course offerings, students per class, and student support programming. And as mentioned, the UC-CSU systems face tension as they attempt to meet enrollment targets despite state budget cuts, raising concerns about growing student numbers without sufficient funding. The Legislative Analyst's Office recommends to avoid the scenario in the future that funding for university systems be connected to student enrollment. And then looking at the bottom right with the green icon, as you can see that it's a small graph, but you can see the visual from 2010 to present day. You can see that the funding has been volatile and unpredictable. And this will continue in the coming proposed budget, creating constraints on higher education strategy and program quality. So to take a closer look at how the proposed budget, as well as California Jobs First and the Master Plan for Career Education influences Sacramento K-16 Collaborative's capacity to achieve its goals, I'll pass it to Annie.
Okay, so moving forward here, I'm going to present kind of some analysis and considerations of all of the information presented, synthesizing what Jacelyn and Emma have shared, looking at it goal by goal, aligning with the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative goals. So our first goal is to send an additional 1,300 young men of color to UC Davis and Sacramento State by 2025. Starting with California Jobs First, numerous different aspects of the program are aimed at inclusive supports for priority populations and economic investments that will impact historically disinvested communities. As part of California Jobs First, there's $15 million allocated for tribal grants that will support economic mobility among Indigenous groups. Additionally, the California Opportunity Youth Apprenticeship Grant, also known by its acronym COYA, promotes training and career readiness among Opportunity youth. So one thing the collaborative should consider is how to leverage and braid funding from these different investments as support for college preparation among young men of color in support of our 1,300 campaign goal. Next, taking a look at the master plan for career education. The sixth goal or area of the master plan is around increasing access and affordability of higher education. And this is the one that holds the most relevance to this goal. Although this goal of the master plan emphasizes financial assistance for learners, as we just saw in the governor's proposed budget, there are no carve-outs. There are carve-outs for other goals of the master plan in the budget, but there's no funding currently allocated to this one. In fact, financial aids and financial assistance supports for students are facing cuts. Finally, another way to address the 1,300 goal is through regional data sharing. Targeting outreach and recruitment and automatic admissions for young men of color who meet CSU requirements is another tactic that will directly align with the second area of the master plan to strengthen regional coordination overall. So in Sacramento, our regional data sharing agreement that spans K-12, county offices of ed, community colleges, CSU and UC is a large step towards strengthening regional coordination and will allow us to target our outreach and recruitment in a really intentional and supportive way to our priority student populations. Finally, the budget. So the proposed nearly 8% reduction in operational costs for CSU and UC really threatens the institution's capacity to enroll and support increasing numbers of students. And the continued deferral of Cal Grant reform, coupled with the cuts to the middle class scholarship, will mean even fewer financial aid dollars for students in need who will be starting college in the fall. So while we're, part of this goal is to send an additional 1,300 young men of color to UC Davis and Sacramento State, it's also important to ensure retention, persistence, and supports once they get there. So these cuts could hinder the collaborative's ability to meet this goal. and finding ways to continue to bolster supports for our low-income students, including providing financial aid advising is going to be essential. All right, I will move forward to our next goal, to triple the number of students graduating high school with freshman college credits by 2026. So starting with California Jobs First. The focus on Jobs First is on expanding access to quality jobs and preparing learners for the workforce of tomorrow. The workforce where there is both opportunity and innovation happening within our region. One area of critical need in terms of dual enrollment is making career technical education dual enrollment options available for learners, particularly in the priority sectors that we covered for We Prosper Together and for the California Jobs First economic blueprint as a whole. So we're doing a good job regionally, a great job, I think, with expanding opportunities in dual enrollment that meet general ed requirements and A through G requirements, but we also need to focus on expanding dual enrollment as part of our pathway specific work. As for the master plan for career ed, again, that kind of question arises, how can we integrate dual enrollment into the expanded pathway opportunities for learners to align with that goal of expanding pathway opportunities for high school students? Additionally, when we think about the career passport provides kind of an alternate route to give credit for prior learning. It's a learning employment record, basically, and it presents an opportunity to recognize all of the ways in which learners earn credit. Maybe that could include dual enrollment. We know that there are some students in our region who are enrolled in what are called dual enrollment classes, but they are not actually receiving dual credit. Perhaps through the use of the career passport, there are some innovative or creative ways that we could recognize that learning and provide credit for it. And then the budget in terms of dual enrollment. So there's increased funding for data systems overhaul within the California community colleges. And this could be an opportunity to enhance or streamline data around dual enrollment in support of students, expanding the way that we, are better understanding of dual enrollment participation and the supports needed regionally. All right, I will move us forward to the third goal of the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative. This is to triple the number of students who graduate from healthcare, engineering, or computing pathways that articulate to quality jobs by 2026. So for California Jobs First, focusing on healthcare, biotechnology, and precision manufacturing is an important way to go. These are all pathway sectors that have been identified by We Prosper Together, our local or regional Jobs First Collaborative, as priority and opportunity sectors. And those sectors, healthcare, biotech, and precision manufacturing, also directly align with the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative's pathway development. So continuing to bolster those more specifically will create enhanced options for students beyond graduation. Those sectors are ones that all have increased regional investment happening through We Prosper Together and Jobs First, increased regional development investment for job growth and quality. And they are all sectors that have opportunities that pay above the living wage in the region. As far as other funding opportunities, the recently released California Opportunity Youth Apprenticeship Grant and the Apprenticeship Innovation Funding that are part of the California Jobs First funding portfolio are also opportunities that we could use to braid funds in support of the apprenticeship aspects of this third goal of the collaborative. So supporting and partnering with collaborative members to apply for funding in these pathway areas and for apprenticeship funding is a critical opportunity. Turning to the master plan for career ed, there are some key questions that we think that the K-16 Collaborative should consider regarding the potential of the career passport. So here are a few of those questions. Can the data collection that is intended to help measure progress toward this goal also serve to prepare for implementation of the career passport? Could the collaborative create a regional career passport as a pilot prototype to assist in meeting this goal? How can the regional data sharing agreement that we've accomplished proactively prepare for the implementation of a career passport statewide? And how can the collaborative assist partners in standardizing documentation of work-based learning in preparation for the career passport? So lots of questions, opportunities, and things to consider. When turning to the budget, with $100 million in funding dedicated to the Career Passport through the community colleges, there is support for data collection that should enable an enhanced ability to track progress toward our career pathways goal in the future. All right, the fourth goal of the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative, to award 2,000 degrees and certificates to comebackers and reverse transfer students who have earned but not claimed them by 2026. So for California Jobs First, the anchor institution of childcare is called out in the statewide economic blueprint. This is an indispensable anchor institution for degree attainment and workforce readiness among adult learners. So as the collaborative considers the supports that are necessary for achieving our comebacker and reverse transfer goal, partnership with We Prosper Together to enhance the availability of childcare is a real need and will support long-term sustainability and success in terms of this goal and in terms of our adult learners in the region for the future. For the master plan, the creation of a streamlined system of awarding credit for prior learning through the Career Passport presents an enhanced opportunity to support adult learners and non-traditional students in their degree attainment. And the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative's regional data sharing agreement may serve as a model of regional coordination in support of this goal, because part of our data sharing agreement actually includes data sharing in support of reverse transfer between four-year colleges and community colleges. And then taking a look at the budget. So there are additional funds in the budget, as we mentioned, for community college data systems that could be leveraged in support of our reverse transfer and adult learner attainment goal. However, as we also mentioned already, there are no funds that have been dedicated in the budget for higher education accessibility and affordability, that aspect of the master plan for career ed. So this makes the reverse transfer pilot and the comebacker campaign that the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative are engaged in really critical as supports for adult learners regionally. And those are areas that we should continue to sustain and support through our resources and our initiatives. All right, and we come to the fifth and final goal of our Sacramento K-16 Collaborative: to achieve Hispanic serving institution status and maintain that status across post-secondary institutions regionally. So we'll start with California Jobs First again. We Prosper Together's catalyst investments in projects to grow quality jobs, particularly in rural counties such as Yolo, Yuba, and Sutter County in our region that have high Latinx populations, could be integrated into kind of a wraparound approach to achieving this goal. Providing supports and overall kind of holistic economic mobility for families and learners. For the master plan for career education, the sixth area or goal of the master plan calls for enhancements to higher education access and affordability, and it will support this goal of the collaborative. However, as yet, no funding in the budget has been dedicated to implementation. So pilot projects of the collaborative in this area could be well positioned if funding is released in the future. And additionally, credit for prior learning and the proposed career passport are intended to broaden access and academic credit to underrepresented populations. Taking a look at the budget. So with the UC and CSU facing these volatile funding trends at the state level, maintaining Hispanic serving institution status across the post-secondary spectrum is all the more important for our post-secondary institutions in the region. However, with the recent federal education grant funding also uncertain, resources that the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative can provide to support Latinx and other priority student populations are indispensable. And an additional challenge that was called out in the budget analysis is that post-secondary institutions are also, attempting to support more students with less funding. So that brings our informational presentation to a close. And before we wrap and have some time for discussion, I also want to give a moment for Emma and Jaceline to share a few other resources that you will find in our recently released policy brief. We're not going to present fully on them, but we invite you to explore these resources, and we'll make the policy brief available to you and show you where the link on our website is as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Annie. So I wanted to share our committee chairs and membership. This information is available in the full brief as a resource if you'd like to follow activities of influential policymakers in this space or reach out and advocate around issues of importance to your work. And I'll go next slide and pass to Jaceline.
Hi, everyone. So this is an abridged legislation that has been introduced and has relevance to the collaborative's work. It's listed here. There's also a link to the full legislation table with all of the bills introduced this session that have relevance to the collaborative. So we update this legislation table each quarter so you can track the bills that impact your work. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, so we'll be updating this on a quarterly basis, and there's a link here on our slides and also in the policy brief, so you can take a look at the full legislation table, and we track the progress of these different bills as they move through the legislative process. All right, so with that, we would like to close with some time for discussion, and we actually have a Mentimeter for you as a way to kind of participate and give us your input as well.
Annie, I just wanted to hop in really
Yeah.
quick, and we got a great question in the chat from
thank you.
Anna. And it says, aside from gas cards and public transportation, how do you support these young men of color who may not be able to attend sessions, workshops, apprenticeships, internships to involve them?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Thank you for that. So as a collaborative, we fund projects and initiatives from partner institutions that apply for funding to support young men of color in various ways. So I'll give you a few examples. One project that was recently funded by the collaborative was an initiative that was a collaboration between Cosumnes River College, one of the campuses in Los Rios Community College District, and Sacramento State University. And what that funding did is it provided funding for an academic advisor from Sac State to be based on the Cosumnes River College campus to provide academic advising and support to students through the transfer process. We've also funded some transfer and bridge programs through the Los Rios Community College District. And then, like, in terms of dual enrollment, also again provided funding for counselors at the high school to level to get trained and serve as adjunct kind of counselors, so that counselors at the high school level are able to like directly enroll students in dual enrollment classes and advise them on their coursework. So those are some different like examples of ways that our institutions are getting creative and using funding to provide support on site. Does that answer your question, Anna? Yeah, I hear you. I know. That is one of our greatest things that we're working on, as well as looking at how can we fund and kind of like create like sustaining infrastructure. I understand your point for sure. All right, with that, I am going to move us over to our Mentimeter, and would love for you to participate. So if you would like to participate, go ahead and scan the QR code on our screen. You can also join by going to menti.com and using the code 36963450. So if you go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen, we will get this started, and we've got opportunities for you to give some of your input, share takeaways, and also give us input on what kind of research would be helpful to you in the future, how we can continue to craft these policy briefs to meet your needs and the work that you're doing. All right, I think we are good to go. I'm going to go ahead and move us forward to the next slide. So in a word or a phrase, we'd love to know what were some of your takeaways or an aha from our policy session. What was maybe like one thing that you will remember or that that resonated? Tuition increases, yeah, the funding for financial assistance is, yeah, the cuts to higher ed are very concerning right now, for sure. Anybody want to hop off mute and say a little bit more about some of the kind of funding takeaways or budget takeaways? It looks like that was one of the areas that really is of concern and that resonated with folks. What you're thinking about for your work. All right, I will move us on. I'm gonna move past that. That was actually really fun. Okay, we would like to know what topics you might like to see covered in future policy briefs. Are there any issue areas that have like particular relevance or that impact your work, or that you would really like to learn more about? Because what we can do is we can kind of do a deep dive into the research, look at like the background and the history of some of these initiatives, as well as do some kind of critical analysis and look at like hearings of some of the legislation that's been introduced and report on how it's progressing and what the current climate is looking like. So yeah, would love any input you have on particular topics that you would like to learn more about too. I'll give you a moment to think on that and submit some responses. We had a presentation earlier today, and pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship was one of the kind of hot topics that people were really keen to learn more about as well. And for whoever put pre-apprenticeship, is that like distinct from apprenticeship too, it being an area that you'd really like to know more, digging into pre-apprenticeship more specifically outside of apprenticeships? I'll take it as a yes. I'll assume yes. Okay, so lots of the work-based learning stuff, it looks like, is for this crowd. Internships, earn and learn pathways. I'm assuming this is business perks for partners or for partnerships. Like how to entice business partnerships. Okay, last question I'll move us forward to. Okay, we also have some suggested topics for our upcoming policy briefs. These are different issues that are kind of like categories that we're seeing, rough categories of what we're seeing in legislation that's been recently introduced, what bills are before the legislature currently, and also some topics that we've covered in the past that we, might circle back to and provide updates around. So we'd love to know, for you looking at these topics, what are your rankings in terms of priority and where you would like to learn more? As we look to what are we going to research and present on next quarter. Go ahead and take a moment. We'd love to see your ranking and prioritization of these topics. I'm always fascinated by watching them shift around on the screen. The workforce development and career pathways. Yeah, okay. So along lines of the work-based learning that we saw in the previous responses too. Okay, with that, I'm going to actually navigate us back and we will close out our presentation with our slides. Last couple of things that we just wanted to share as resources for you to continue to stay in contact and communication with us. On this slide, you've got the links, and we'll share this out to you as well about how you can learn more about the K-16 Collaborative and connect. So you can visit our website, follow us on LinkedIn. There's a QR code if you would like to subscribe to our newsletter. We publish a newsletter on a monthly basis, and resources such as this policy brief are always included in our newsletter. And finally, I'd just like to say thank you. Thanks for being here with us today. All of the information that we presented and access to our previous policy briefs that have been produced for the Sacramento K-16 Collaborative are available on our website. We'll drop that link to the resource hub in the chat for all of you as well. And please feel free to reach out to us by email as well at research@capitalimpact.org.